Let me welcome you back. We have completed the previous chapters in ninth standard that we have talked about the chapter called, diversity. We have studied completely, and after that we have talked about why do we fall ill. Up to that, it is coming in your syllabus. This chapter, of course, has been deleted from your syllabus this year, but you need to have a great idea of what are natural resources. Natural resources are all those things provided to us by the nature on which our life depends, To name a few, it is very simple to understand: air, water, soil. Can you imagine your life? Can you imagine to survive on this universe without these? These are the natural resources without which we cannot manage our life. So we need to talk about them, to understand them, and what are the basic ways, in what ways. If you understand them, you can understand that whether we are damaging them, why do we need to preserve them for our future, Is that clear? So let us begin a few with our air. Air, of course, we are talking about atmosphere. And few topics that you need to understand here is the natural balance that is maintained in nature, in the atmosphere, but the amount of oxygen that you remember is 21%. The amount of CO2 is just 0.03%. It is so important, 0.03%. We have talked about this CO2. Increase in the concentration of CO2 is harmful in many ways. In the coming part of this video, we will understand about that. Amount of oxygen, 21%, is highly essential for the survival of living organisms and to carry out all sort of burning and combustion process on which our life depends. We need that oxygen. But you can imagine that so many millions of living organisms on this universe, are always, when they breathe, they take in oxygen and release out CO2. Every time, whenever you burn anything, you are using oxygen and releasing CO2. So much oxygen is being utilized every second. All the plants, all the animals of this universe. I am not talking only about human beings. All the animals, they take oxygen and release CO2 every second for breathing and respiration, that you know. So when so much oxygen is being removed and everyone is releasing out CO2 in the atmosphere, what is so that oxygen is never decreasing below 28%? CO2 amount is not increasing above 0.03%. That is what I am talking about, the natural balance. We will see in later parts of the picture in this chapter why this is achieved, how it is achieved. One basic thing everyone knows, that heavy amount of CO2 that is released in the atmosphere is definitely removed by the green plants, which utilize this CO2 for the process of photosynthesis. Lot of CO2 also dissolves in water in the form of carbonates and bicarbonate ions, which are utilized by a lot of aquatic and marine animals to make their shells, the outer cover, the exoskeleton, as you say. So that is where the way in which CO2, which is released heavily in the atmosphere, is being removed. As far as air is concerned, air also plays an important role in climate control. Climate control, you understand that the dry conditions, the humid conditions, the rain that occurs, the water cycle, air plays an important role in that, the clouds that is formed. So climatic control, the climate will be a hot climate or a humid climate or a dry climate or a cold kind of condition. In all these maintenance, the amount of moisture that is trapped in the atmosphere plays a huge role. So the air is definitely playing a huge role in the climatic control process. And what is the moving air is called as wind. depends a lot. Wind, when it is windy condition, we can dry our clothes. We feel better in the humid and hot climate when the wind blows. How this wind is formed? You have studied in your lower classes again, what we talk about the land breeze and the sea breeze. याद होगा आपको आराम से कि air always moves from a region of higher pressure to a region of lower pressure. That is the way it blows, moves, and the moving air is called as wind. तो wind formation में क्या कारण है? हमारे लैंड का एक एरिया, हमारे जमीन का, अर्थ का एक तरफ हायर प्रेशर होना चाहिए, दूसरी तरफ लोअर प्रेशर. Air will always move from higher to lower. And how that is created? That is created by uneven heating of land and water. The specialty of lands is it gets hot faster than water, and it even cools faster than water. So when it is summer season, or let us talk about like that in the daytime when sunlight is falling. So in the presence of sunlight, land gets hot faster than water. If you have a separation of lithosphere and land and water, river or ocean and the land on which we live, if they are separated there, what will happen? The land becomes hot first, and if something is hot, the air above it is also hotter. गर्म चीज के टच में हवा आएगा तो हवा भी गर्म हो जाएगा. So land becomes hot first as compared to the water. The air also gets heated up, and the hot air is lighter, it rises up. So from the land surface the water goes up and there is nothing. So that is an area of lower pressure. But the water which is colder as compared to the land, there the air is present. That air from higher pressure moves to the land. Then we call it as a sea breeze. But when it is night or cold condition, में क्या होता है? In winter seasons, the land becomes colder. So when it becomes colder, the air is also cooler and it settles down, higher pressure area. But comparatively, the liquid is warmer because it cools later. It takes time to cool. So if the liquid is warmer, the air above it is warmer, so air rises there. So it becomes a low pressure there. This time, the air moves from land to the sea. That is called a land breeze and sea breeze. This is what you need to understand as far as the natural resource air is concerned. And what we are doing nowadays, the air is so much important. You have understood? It is necessary for our survival. It is necessary for climatic control. It is helpful in creating the wind which moves from land to sea, sea to land. It creates the monsoon, The dry conditions, the humid conditions are due to the moving wind. So much important role is played by air. And what we are doing, we are increasing the number of vehicles, we are increasing number of industries, the chimneys, the smoke, and all those things that is released in the air is creating air pollution. Needless to talk about the harmful effect of air pollution. It causes breathing problem, lungs problem, irritation to the eye, damage to the skin. Lot of problems being created. So we should take care of reducing air pollution. Although a lot of steps are being taken, a lot of vehicles are coming with BS6 vehicles. They have allowed now. They are coming up with catalytic converters, which are reducing the amount of pollution. So these things must come. And every local people should also talk about this. Every public awareness is always the best thing for reducing pollution in all the cases. As far as water is concerned, I need not tell you that water is a very, very important liquid in our life, and that is highly important for a lot of activities. The water helps in the formation of water cycle, which causes the rain and condensation and all those things. Water pollution is also important and grave situation in our India. A lot of industries are pouring their waste directly into the rivers, creating a lot of problem to the aquatic life. So as we have talked about, the industries must be forced to have a sewage treatment plant before releasing the water into that. As far as soil is concerned, we live on soil, we build our houses on soil, the school, the colleges that you are studying, the industries, everything runs on the soil. Plus, India is a land of agriculture. 70% are farmers, and the agriculture is heavily dependent on the soil. You have studied about the formation of soil in your junior classes, the weathering of rock, the formation of C horizon, B horizon, A horizon, O horizon, the slow breakup of rock soil into big particles, into gravel, into sand, into silt, that all the factors which are responsible for the formation of soil. You need to go through it. And even soil is getting polluted, mostly by the after Green Revolution, mostly the use of fertilizers, insecticides, of course industrial waste. But the biggest concern nowadays of soil pollution are these one-time use plastics, polythene bags. Repeated reminders from the environmentalists, from the government, but the people has just not stopped using this one-time polythene. You must take an oath of carrying your bags to the market and carrying materials in that bag, and you should deny the use of polythenes. So these are the few things you need to take care of if you can help the nature a bit. Otherwise, the nature has in it everything. I will talk about what are the basic natural processes in which the nature actually manages its resources. There is a very, very important process called as biogeochemical cycle. Biogeochemical cycle are the cyclic processes which maintain the concentration of the natural resources. Cyclic process is a give and take relationship. Therefore, nothing is increasing, nothing is decreasing, a balance is maintained. Mind you, I have talked about air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution created by human beings, not by the nature. अभी आप अंदाज़ा लगाओ, आज से 6-7 महीना पहले आप लोगों ने न्यूज़ में सुना होगा कि the pollution level has decreased. The water in the river is much more pure and fresh. How? The human activities were reduced to minimum thanks to this coronavirus. All the schools, colleges, industries, almost everything came to a standstill. People were locked into their rooms. And see what happened. The nature has rejuvenated itself. So that is the beauty of nature. Again, when human beings will start, they will create the problems. So what nature does? The nature has this important process of biogeochemical cycle in which it maintains the composition of everything. There are a lot of examples. I'll give you a few examples like the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle. These are few examples. There are many like water cycle. So a lot of all these processes are cyclic process, means the components in the nature present at some places are used up. But when they are used up, the amount should reduce. But they are again given back. So their composition is maintained. As जैसा मैंने थोड़ी देर पहले कहा था आपको कि ऑक्सीजन 21% था, है और रह जाएगा अगर नेचर को डिस्टर्ब नहीं किया जाए. कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड जितना चाहिए नेचर को उतना था, उतना है, if human beings will not disturb it. And that is possible only because of this cyclic process. You can see the carbon dioxide. The carbon is present in the nature in the form of carbon dioxide in air. And this carbon dioxide is taken up by a process called photosynthesis. And it is used up by the green plants. When these green plants are eaten up by the herbivores, the carbon that has entered into the green plant, it goes to herbivores. When the herbivores are eaten up by carnivores, see the travel, carbon is is traveling. Carbon dioxide in air has converted into glucose or carbohydrate, went into green plants, into going to herbivores, going to carnivores. And when the carnivores, the herbivores and the plants carry out the process of respiration, the CO2 is given back. What was removed again goes back. Not only this, if you can imagine, just now I have talked about coal and petroleum. If these carnivores, herbivores and green plants, they get buried inside the earth crust. Now see, they have gone somewhere else, inside the soil. Their body gets converted into coal and petroleum. And then what happens? We extract this coal and petroleum on the earth's surface and we use it as a fuel, which are burned. The process is called combustion. And it is returned back. But during combustion or burning, the CO2 is formed back. You can see the carbon which was removed by many ways into the living system, it has even gone inside the earth crust, but it comes back. And that is how it is neither decreasing nor increasing. If something is continuously given, it should increase. If something is continuously removed, it should be decreasing. But what is removed is given back. So that is how the maintenance is going on. This is the beauty of biogeochemical cycle. Same thing happens with nitrogen gas. 78% in the atmosphere is removed by a process called nitrogen fixation. It converts the nitrogen gas into nitrate salts. These nitrate salts enter into the water in the ground, dissolves in that, and it is absorbed by the plants. So it again goes above the soil surface in the plants. The nitrogen is utilized in the synthesis of proteins, DNA, RNA, and in them it is used. But when the plants are eaten again by herbivores, the nitrogen goes into the herbivore. When the herbivores are eaten up by carnivores, the nitrogen travels. It has been removed from the atmosphere. It has gone into the living system. It has gone inside the soil. When these carnivores and herbivores releases urine, what is there in the urine? It is urea. And when they die or the plant parts fall on the earth, inside the earth crust, the protein present in their body mixes with the soil, and these urea and proteins are converted by a process called ammonification. They are converted into ammonia. It is done by a few bacteria which are clearly found inside the earth crust. They convert urea and protein into ammonia. They are called ammonifying bacteria. The process is called ammonification. Ammonia is converted by nitrification. Nitrification into a compound called nitrite. And this nitrite is broken by a process called denitrification. These are all processes going on inside the soil, and the nitrite is broken again back into nitrogen gas, which goes back to the atmosphere. So that is the beauty, which is called as nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, there is water cycle. So when everything is cyclic process, we call about a give and take process, which maintains the composition of natural resources properly in the environment. I hope I am clear there. So that is one thing. The next major important thing about the nature is I am coming back to the natural resource air. In air, I have just now talked about the presence of carbon dioxide that is so important. In atmosphere, the CO2 is present in 0.03%. What happens, the sun, which has a temperature of few lakhs degrees Celsius, some 10 lakh or 100, around 100 lakh degrees, crores of degrees Celsius. This is a huge temperature, and therefore the sun releases heat radiations, of smaller wavelength. I mean, the wavelength is inversely proportional to the temperature. through them it enters into the atmosphere and reaches the Earth's surface. Nothing can stop them as they are radiations of very small wavelength. Radiations of small wavelength. The Earth's surface gets heated up to a temperature of 50 to 55 degrees Celsius. That is the maximum recorded temperature of the Earth's surface in the presence of heat, in the presence of solar energy. So compared to that lakh degrees Celsius, this temperature is very less. And less is the temperature, larger is the wavelength. You know, it is inversely proportional. So when these larger wavelengths are released, what happens? The carbon dioxide and sometimes CH4, what is called as methane, which is also released in the atmosphere by decomposition process that goes on, are the greenhouse gases. ऐसे लिखते हैं हम लोग, are the gases which absorbs or rather traps the heat radiations of larger wavelength. They cannot stop the smaller wavelength. They come through the carbon dioxide particles because that is very small wavelength, penetrate through even small particles. So they reach the surface. But when the Earth's surface is heated up at a very low temperature, lower is the temperature, larger is the wavelength. Larger wavelength never crosses these particles. These particles stops that radiations. This trapping of the heat radiation in the atmosphere is called, this is called the greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect. Trapping of heat radiations which are of larger wavelength. If you ever traveled in a four-wheeler car, you do one thing when you go somewhere in the summer seasons. Okay, there is certain amount of heat in the atmosphere, no doubt. You go with the car and then park your car in sunny condition. आपने देखा होगा सारे ड्राइवर्स और या फोर व्हीलर वाले कार को ठंडी जगहों पर पार्क करने के लिए ढूंढते हैं जगह. आपको अगर नहीं मिलता, आप धूप में खड़ी कर दीजिए कार एंड यू पुट ऑन दिस ग्लास शील्ड्स. खिड़की गिरा लीजिए किसी से, जो आपके विंडो शील्ड्स हैं, एंड जस्ट गो आउट. व्हेन यू कम बैक, okay, outside the car you will have certain feeling of heat, but when you open the car and enter inside, you will feel 5 times more heat inside. What has happened? The smaller wavelength from the sun has penetrated the microscopic pores of the glass, has gone inside the car, and the seats and the other materials of the car got heated up, and they also released the heat radiations. But this time the heat radiations were of larger wavelength. The larger wavelength could not penetrate out of the glass. Larger wavelength कभी small pore से बाहर आ नहीं सकता, तो वो अंदर ट्रैप हो जाता है. तो जितना भी हीट गया अंदर, वो अंदर ही रह गया, और हीट आ रहा है वो भी अंदर रह जा रहा है. So that is why the heat increases. This is called greenhouse effect, which causes heating effect, gives a heating effect. Whatever temperature you are feeling today on the Earth's surface, गर्मी के दिनों में भी, ठंड के दिनों में धूप निकलता है, राहत महसूस करते हैं. Why? Because the heat of the sun is being trapped, and that is comfortable for us. It is due to the 0.03% CO2 in the atmosphere. It is a good thing. Greenhouse effect is highly important and necessary for our survival. Otherwise, what would happen? The moment it is night, all the heat that fell on the earth and you felt certain warmth, but at night, if there was no CO2, all these heat radiations would have gone back, and the earth would have been chilling cold. Every night would have been chilling cold, and survival would have been at stake. अगर दिन में 2-3 दिन धूप नहीं निकलता है, तो -20 डिग्री टेम्परेचर चला जा सकता है. It would drop heavily. And thanks to the presence of CO2 and the greenhouse effect, that certain amount of temperature we are experiencing. So it is not a negative thing, it is a positive thing. It is often spoken in a negative term. Why not? It is associated with global warming. Now, global warming is a concern which will arise when CO2 concentration will increase. Not at 0.03%. At 0.03%, the amount of heat CO2 is trapping is good for us. लेकिन कंसर्न ये है, चिंता ये है कि अगर CO2 बढ़ता जाएगा, बढ़ता क्यों जाएगा, डर क्यों है? हम पेड़ बहुत काट रहे हैं। हमने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले बात किया कि ट्रीज आर रिमूविंग द CO2 फ्रॉम द एटमॉस्फेयर, इज इट नॉट? तो CO2 जब बढ़ेगा तो more heat will be trapped, more temperature will rise, and that is the concern of global warming in future. Is that clear to you? That is greenhouse effect. And one more beauty of environment we will study today. The beauty of nature I will talk about. What is the beauty of nature in the atmosphere is that once upon a time when the earth was formed, the solar radiations contain, UV rays. And when the UV rays entered from the sun, the UV radiations, ये बहुत पहले की बात कर रहे हैं, UV radiations हमारे एटमॉस्फेयर में एंटर किया. This is the earth's surface. This is the layer of air in our atmosphere. So what happened when the UV rays in the beginning entered our atmosphere? The oxygen gas present in the atmosphere, in the effect of UV rays, broke into atomic oxygen. This atomic oxygen combined with O2 to form a compound O3. This O3 has a very strong binding capacity, is attached with each other, and this O3, many O3 molecules attached with each other and formed a continuous layer over the atmosphere, Okay? What is being labeled as, this is called as a ozone umbrella. And what did this? The ozone, when it was formed, now it is not allowing the UV rays to enter inside. शुरू में जब ओजोन नहीं था तब आया था यूवी रे और ओजोन बना, ओजोन बनते ही एक लेयर बना दिया एटमॉस्फेयर पर और अब यूवी रेडिएशन को रोक दिया है. By the time on the earth evolutionary process went on, several life process we have talked about in diversity, porifera, coelenterata, invertebrates, chordates, vertebrates came, human beings came. और जब तक हम आए इस यूनिवर्स में तब तक ओजोन लेयर बन चुका था. ये ओजोन लेयर करता क्या है? अभी जो बात की, it stops the UV rays from entering our atmosphere, It is helpful because the UV rays nowadays, if it comes nowadays, if enters into, it is helpful because the UV rays, if enters into our atmosphere, then it may cause lot of problems. It may cause skin cancer. It may cause cataract. It may cause irritation of eyes also. There is genetic disorders. It may cause even reproductive problems. And in plants, it also decreases the rate of photosynthesis and flowering. So number of flowers will reduce, the amount of photosynthesis going on in plants will reduce. So these are the hell lot of problems that we may suffer from. So with all these problems, the ozone layer in the atmosphere, the air,